The Lenten lesson of this second Sunday of Lent is really a simple one, summarized in three very succinct words. Listen to him. These are the three words spoken by a voice that came from a cloud that overshadowed Peter, James, and John when they witnessed this bizarre, miraculous transfiguration of Jesus. These three words are spoken by God, who first identifies Jesus as my beloved Son. But hold on a minute. Let's scratch our heads. You know, with the presence of Jesus there in these dazzling white garments that he's wearing, beyond the scope that any earthly bleach could even attain, as well as the visible appearance of the two greatest figures of the Old Testament, Moses and Elijah, would it not have been more appropriate for the voice of God to say, "This is my beloved Son. Look at him"? After all, it was the sight of the transfigured Jesus that prompted Peter to blurt out, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here." And furthermore, the transfigured Jesus never spoke a word until he and those three apostles were coming down from that mountain, when Jesus charged them not to relate what they had seen to anyone. Yes, God chooses to emphasize the primacy of listening, not seeing, when it comes to the continuation of the mission and the message of Jesus Christ. God did not say, "Look at him," but he said, "Listen to him." Listening is a somewhat common theme in the pages of sacred Scripture. It surfaces in our first reading this morning, in the very first book of the Bible, in the story of Abraham, our father in faith. As the story unfolds, we see that there is a disturbing exchange between God and Abraham, which prompts us to wonder why Abraham did not refuse to listen to God's frightful command that he offer his only son, Isaac, as a burnt offering. And yet we see that Abraham obeys this dreadful command that no parent should ever have to fulfill, namely to kill one's own offspring just because God said so. And yet, Abraham chose to simply listen. He didn't argue. He didn't complain. He didn't say, "Hold it, I want to dissent from this teaching or command." He didn't analyze. He didn't refuse to obey God's command, an outlandish command from our point of view. And deep in his trusting and devoted heart, Abraham, in his mind, must have decided that he would simply let go and let God. He probably remembered all the troubles of the world began when we didn't listen to God. A little earlier in that first book of the Bible, we have another story of Adam and Eve. And God told them, "You are free to eat from any of the trees of this garden, except the tree of knowledge of good and bad. From that tree you shall not eat, for the moment you eat from it, you are surely doomed to die." Well, we all know how well they listened to God in that story. Now, I suppose if Abraham had lived much longer, he certainly would have witnessed this listening theme carried on through the pages of the Bible, a theme that's often found in our Jewish and Christian scriptures. From Jacob's early plea, "Assemble and listen, sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel, your father," all the way forward to Jesus' parable of the seed that is sown in rich soil to stand for those who listen to the word and accept it and bear fruit 30, 60, and 100-fold. God's command, "Listen to him," presumes that Jesus and his church is still speaking to us. Listening. What does listening presume? It needs to presume first a need for silence, because the only way we will hear is to be in silence. But the world we live in has become a noisy world, a world filled with a lot of clatter. And it's gotten to the point where we human beings even get uncomfortable with silence. Sometimes when we're alone at home and it's a little undisturbing quiet, we turn on the TV or the radio just to fill the void. We have lost the art of appreciating quiet and silence. And in the meantime, our world gets louder and louder and louder. We need to find and seek out that silence if we are to hear the voice of God. And that leads us to our daily prayer, because the only way that we will be able to hear and listen to the voice of God, it's only in our daily prayer. We need to find that quiet time, that quiet space. My favorite hour of the day is from 5 a.m. to 6 o'clock. At 5 o'clock every day, I'm sitting before the Blessed Sacrament. It is a most beautiful, quiet time of day. The buses that rumble by the window here don't come by until 6:15. So I have this whole hour of quiet to myself. No cell phone beeping at me to tell me I have an appointment. No one in the office looking for me that someone wants to speak with me. The phone's not ringing. It's quiet. And I pray. And then I often just close my eyes and just soak in the silence of God. It's not hard to do. It's really easy if we just do it. We really need to make a serious effort in this fast-paced noisy world to find this classroom of silence, as Matthew Kelly talks about in his book, Rediscovering Catholicism. The classroom of silence, where then we can hang on to the very words of Jesus and listen to what he has to tell us. That silence brings about another fancy word in our Christian mysticism, a word that we should never be afraid of: contemplation. We all can get good at it. We just have to practice it. And it involves silence before the Lord. Matthew Kelly says there are 3 important fruits that come from silent, daily prayer, contemplation. First of all, he says it enables us to make sense of things. We live in a crazy world, a world that has 1,000,001 different messages that want our attention and want us to buy into their philosophies. We need to make sense of things. Daily prayer does that. Number 2, our daily prayer and silence enables us to live life deeply and deliberately. We live in a culture of superficiality, on the surface, all about pleasure. But there's no depth in our life and living anymore. And few people live deliberately, with purpose, with a firm vision and a goal of why we are here: for heaven, for God. Daily prayer enables us to live deeply and deliberately. And finally, Mr. Kelly says, daily prayer and contemplation enables us to build up an inner density that prevents this surrounding culture from swallowing us up, which can cause us to give up these gospel values. Daily prayer, silence. Let's do it. We need it.